Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for being here against all odds, based on the schedule. I'm as surprised as you are, and I very much appreciate you being here. This talk was called State of the Community. I thought that sounded a little bit formal, so we went with Community Chat Fest 5000, which, hopefully adds an informal flavour. Okay, so introductions and such. My name is Will Goldstone. I should probably have a slide. There you go. My job title is Content Manager, which is kind of vague, but basically I run a team called the Online Content Team in the UK, and we make a lot of the tutorial content that you guys see. We make some demos, we interface with the community, and we do all kinds of things related to helping people learn and helping people stay interested in making games. Joseph Robbins.
Hello. I'm Joseph Robbins, or Joe Robbins, as I'm more informally known as. My current job title is King in the North, apparently.
Same on the computer.
I've been with Unity for a little while now. I recently moved back from Copenhagen, where I was working, back to the UK, where I'm based up in the north. Hence, King in the North. That's not why. It's not? Yeah, so I've been around for a while. These days I'm more European-based, more European-focused. But I recently set up the Manchester Unity user group up there in the north. All the banner men.
No one knows where that is.
There's so many jokes about Game of Thrones related to my northern location. But yeah.
What do you do there, Jay? What do you do there?
So I do a lot of things these days, but I do a lot of work with game jams and supporting game jams, and that's still something that's continuing to this day. I've always been a fan of game jams and competitions, and specifically the game jam due to its immense awesomeness and creative output. So I've been doing a lot of work still with that, the Oculus VR jam, things like that. But also I do a lot of conferences and that kind of thing, obviously mainly focused around Europe these days. But it used to be that I was all over the place, but we've got people in different countries now, which is really helpful. It means that I don't have to be sitting on a plane constantly, which is great.
And I have a mic on my face.
You do.
I'm Aurora Demopoulos. You might know me if you're on the forums or the community in general, just as Aurora, as my name says. Community manager basically means I sit on the community site and take all your complaints and your whining to the devs and then try and get them to talk to you. Which happens a lot. But yeah, I take a lot of the feedback. I'm also on social media occasionally. That's all I really do, is post stuff and then troll you occasionally. And also work on various improvements that we're going to be talking about as well. And yeah, so I'd really like to get your feedback in real life and not just in written form, so I can get the tone of voice, which is always nice.
Okay. So we have a vague agenda. We've got about an hour to chat to you guys. I'm going to talk to you about some of the Learn projects that my team's working on. And then Joe's not got a bullet point, unfortunately. He's going to talk about some of the events and game jams and things. And then Aurora and I are going to talk about website development, some of the ideas that we've got for improving the community, improving forums, and adding new features and things like that. So you can see we've got their sync of other areas. So we've recently started working on the forum, and we're going to be sort of rolling that kind of synchronization out through other areas and hopefully trying to add new features and things. And I've just repeated myself twice, so let's move on. Yeah. Okay, so Learn development. So hopefully you guys have seen the Learn area of the site. We try and make sure that we keep a balance between making new users interested and actually providing information where it's needed. So for example, we just did the new open beta of 4.6 for the UI, which you may or may not have heard about. And we've put out a new topic of tutorials all about that. So if you go to the Learn site now, there's a whole bunch of new tutorials all about the UI. And generally speaking, I kind of want to hear from you guys about what you think about what we're doing next, which I'll tell you about in a moment, and what you like, what you don't like about what we have on offer right now. So tutorial-wise, currently working on 4.6, more UI tutorials. We've covered most of the main components, but what we want to do is put out some example use cases and some live training sessions so that we can actually interface with you guys as well. And then at the same time, we're working on Unity 5 tutorials so that there's actually a bunch of stuff ready. In the past, we've not been as good at getting stuff ready for when the release is actually out, which isn't so cool. But this time we have a bit of time. Hopefully, when Unity 5's out, we'll have tutorials on how to leverage those new graphical features, the new audio system, and yeah, various other things that you'll see in 5X, further down the line after 5.0, such as UNet and things like that. Sample assets as well is a big part of what we do. We're just pushing either today or tomorrow an update to the a new 4.6 version of sample assets. But our main focus has been working on making them work well with 5, so that when that's ready, they'll come out. So basically, we've done a branch of those, worked on the 5.0 sample assets, and then we've rolled all of that knowledge back into the 4.6 version so that 4X users don't kind of miss out. We had a training day yesterday, which was fairly well received, and we're fairly happy with that. We had a project called Nightmares, which was a kind of top-down shooter, and we'll release that on the Asset Store. Tried to release it on the Asset Store yesterday, but there's a bug somewhere within the uploader. Good times, but we'll fix that today or tomorrow. And you'll have access to that. That's got an example of the new UI, very simple example, just using a slider for a health bar and a couple of other features like text and images. Should be a fairly good introduction to that. And things like the 2D pack as well, we're always trying to kind of think how we should best package things, provide them to you. A lot of people making 2D games with Unity since 4.3, and we've put a bunch of examples into a 2D pack. So if you look for 2D pack, or if you look for the Unity Technologies publisher on the Asset Store, you'll see the 2D pack there. It's got like a Flappy Bird example, it's got a curtain shooter, it's got Angry Birds, and all of those kind of things made with the new sprite tools. As well as that, I wanted to raise a point about community content. We made a blog post a couple of months ago asking for anyone who's making content that we could put onto the Learn area, and basically, in exchange for a bio and a link back to your website on there. There's been a few examples of that that have been successful, but basically we haven't really advertised the fact that we want that, and we need to get better at that. So just to run back through those things with the aid of imagery, there's a new tutorial section on UI. I've taken a still from YouTube for some reason instead of our website. Not sure why I did that. And then some of the stuff that's coming up in Unity 5, we've got this, hopefully, for want of a much better phrase, AAA kind of project that we're working on called Unity Labs. This is a character that we've had made for one of those, and he'll be there to kind of teach you lots of different rigging stuff, some of the new mechanism features, facial rigging, those kind of things. Oops, my Mac is falling asleep for some reason. That's interesting. Now the keyboard doesn't work. That was all going quite fluidly as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You think? It was, wasn't it? What's going on?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to bail out briefly and then plug it back in, and we'll you can just talk amongst yourselves about how well that was going. It really was.
What? Wait.
Okay, current slide.
And we're
Slide. Key press, job done. Okay. The next few slides, we've got some concept art. So this is what we call the listening room. It's basically a space station in this kind of retro future style. We're going to use this to show off some of the audio features in this specific area. And then the rest of the kind of areas there to kind of show you mechanism, to show you eventually sort of world space UI in this area. And then, yeah, like I said, mechanism, we have this kind of gym modular area that you'll be able to piece apart. And then eventually we're hoping to kind of build it into first or third person shooter examples, which we can use, obviously, with this UNet networking features that's coming up next. Just another couple of shots there. Then a couple of shots just from what sample assets are looking like in 5 now. So we've got PBR in there, physically based rendering, obviously lighting from the sky and, much better looking stuff. We've got new controllers for the car if you've used sample assets before. First release wasn't great. We've kind of rewritten majority of it, to be honest with you, for 5. And yeah, it's It's looking a lot nicer. Hopefully a lot of the scripts we're going to be giving you are a lot more extendable, and our plan is, much like the GUI, to open source all of that stuff so that you can add stuff to it. We can pull stuff back in, and then when the next release comes around, we'll try and put that out there. I'm going to answer questions from you guys on this stuff at the end of my particular segment, and then we'll kind of move on. And then, yeah, just a quick... I'm just going to turn that down. We don't really want the audio. This is the training day project that we had yesterday, Monday, Tuesday, whenever it was. Tuesday, thank you. But yeah, this is just a quick example of making a top-down isometric shooter of a little kid that's having a dream about his teddies coming to life. But yeah, we'll ship that on the asset store hopefully today. We'll see how it goes. And with that, there's the slide deck from the training day. So if you're a teacher or anything like that, you can reuse this for training as well. And then there's the 2D pack that I mentioned. As you can see, there's Flappy Bird in a monster truck, which hopefully is what everyone wants. And then, as I mentioned before, community-based content. So this is one example from a very cool girl called Emmy Johansson. Jonassen, that's the one. Get confused with Emmy Jonassen and Emil Johansson, of course. Easy mistake to make. But yeah, basically we kind of repost this content and then get a kind of nice bio and a link over to the site where it came from. So I think we're about to move on to Joe. Has anybody got any questions about that bit or kind of stuff that we do? We don't have any mics, so I'm just going to run over and talk to people in this kind of informal setting.
This is really like Jeremy Kyle now.
It is. That's probably a niche reference.
I don't know how many people will get that.
Springer, kind of.
Just wondering when Unity 5 hits, if there's any plan of doing a video tutorial that kind of overviews everything that's changed or new features.
So basically, with Unity 5, we want to have a couple of longer introduction videos that are kind of a migration thing. So like, here's how we used to do graphics or light mapping and all that stuff. Here's how you do it now, kind of thing. So we'll do that for those two things. And then what we'll do is go back and remake some of the kind of beginner editor stuff so that it's more appropriate for 5. So instead of just doing, a bunch of videos that cover absolutely everything over again, we'll just kind of supplement those introductory parts so that people can jump into the same, topics or areas on the website that they're used to and get the up-to-date information. That's the general plan. Richard?
So now that 5 has been announced and shown off and so on, I imagine some people are going to be looking at their 4.6 projects and starting to think about how they can prepare for moving to 5 at some point. Now, obviously, they can't actually build anything in 5 until it's out, but is there content about creating assets, like the best way to author textures or HDR content and things like that, to make a transition to 5 easy later on that you can put out in advance of 5 coming out?
That's an excellent idea. So basically, the guy sat right behind you, actually, Pete and Dave, another artist on our team, have been working with 5 and kind of learning the best ways to author textures, normal maps, etc., kind of preparing for PBR. So probably what would be best is either a blog post or a preparatory tutorial that says, here's how to get your artwork ready, or here's how to start thinking about PBR or all of those things. Of course, there's also things like scripting and some of those changes that are going to be coming up. If anyone was in the training day, you'll notice that we tried to change the scripting that we did that so that it will work in 5. So there's some kind of simple API changes like shortcuts to rigid body, shortcuts to audio as a component will be being taken away, and you'll be using get component references instead. So we'll probably make just a migration video about scripting, and then also, like I say, we need to do the graphical stuff beforehand because obviously people want to get ready first. That's awesome. Thanks, man. Just gonna do that.
With the new car, are you building better documentation for that? Because last time we used it, we literally had to have a mechanical engineer edit the wheel colliders.
Do you mean the car in the existing sample assets, or do you mean the old car demo?
The existing sample assets.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, we can do. Mark, who's rewriting that, isn't here, so I don't want to speak for him. But I'm his boss, so I can tell him to, which is wicked, isn't it? Yeah, we'll ask him to write a detailed breakdown of that. Some of the new physics stuff people have got a lot of questions about. Richard, you've played with that quite a lot as well. Yeah, wheel colliders are totally different. A lot of people have been debating what's the best way to kind of tune them, etc. And I think we've found a pretty good balance in the assets we've got right now. I mean, I'll share that with you, and you can tell us what you think. But yeah, I mean, we should be able to ship if you guys, if anyone's on the beta for 5, a beta version of sample assets, so you can tell us what works and what doesn't. But yeah, we know it needs a lot of documenting because there's a ton of nuance with physics. So yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
With the community content, the articles and things, what are you guys specifically looking for? I mean, are you looking for tutorials? Are you looking for use cases of assets and things? Are you looking for our stories of how we've developed content? Like, what kind of things do you want?
So basically with the community stuff, I'm just going to get out of the light because it hurts. So with the community stuff, we're pretty much looking for anything that isn't what we've already got. So we try and create a lot of content, but we don't get through that much stuff. Whereas people out in the community will make stuff that's a bit more niche that we wouldn't think to spend time on. So if someone's making, I don't know, a tutorial on scrolling UVs or something, well, it's not that niche, but you can imagine there are particular niche cases where, you know, we've got 4.6 coming up. We want to work on a series on the new UI, so we spend a bunch of time on that. And, you know, these smaller things get kind of left behind, which is, you know, not what we want. You know, we split our learn area up into these kind of 9 or 10 distinct topics so that we could create a framework for that kind of stuff. So really, we've been kind of trawling the web, trying to find tutorials that fit nicely in there, and we do kind of demark them differently from ours. I've got a little community badge, so you can tell that, you know, you've got this fairly linear progression of scripting tutorials, for example, in beginner, and then suddenly there's something completely out of context. It's got a badge on it. You can tell it's a very specific thing, but it is stuff that people want to know. So we're really just looking for really high quality stuff wherever we can find it. And the guy sat to your right, James, is, you know, one of the people who kind of vetting that kind of stuff. So if anyone does have tutorial content, whether it's written or video or audio, whatever it happens to be, we want to find a way to get it put online. Any other questions? Okay, we've got 2.
Have you guys looked into opening like a web view within the editor so that you can watch the tutorials actually inside of the editor instead of having to leave it?
So we have, in Unity 5, there's a thing called the home screen coming, which will load before the editor. And basically what that gives you is the project wizard, and it gives you a bunch of other kind of stuff that you can do. With 5.0, it's going to be just the project wizard, and it'll be links to learn and other stuff. But the plan for after that is to have other things in there. So it's all HTML based, so we can put whatever we want in. In the learn section, we'll have the ability to just watch that stuff in there in a web view, because that's all that entire panel is. So you can just pop that up and watch it at the same time. Obviously, you know, my preference is that people would watch it in a browser because you've got the links to the other related content, and it makes it a lot easier. There's certain stuff I don't think really makes sense to put into the editor, and I'm still unsure as to whether we should be doing tutorials sat in an editor window. I mean, let's get a show of hands. Who would prefer or being able to watch that video content inside the editor, and who would just have a web browser? So hands up for in editor. Okay, that is 5.5. And hands up for I just love browsers.
Everyone.
Cool. It's not looking good. Yeah, so yeah, obviously actual integration is the main advantage. So we've done a lot of stuff with a actual teaching panel. We haven't touched it for a couple of months because we've been working on Unite stuff, but we've been working on a training panel that basically gives you an instruction, highlights the part of the editor to tell you what to do, and you go and do it, and it recognizes that you've done that. So we are doing some work on that kind of thing, and then maybe later, once we have that home screen and the learn stuff in there, we'll bring that all together. But yeah, cool. The other question, this guy.
So I know there's a lot of questions, or there's a lot of training you're doing right now with like the Unity editor itself. I see a lot of problems with like beginning game developers, like the other aspects of like marketing it and selling it and growing a business. And I know it's like, especially with the Unity 5.0 stuff, it seems like they're expanding a lot more to like cloud services and build. If there's any plans on education and learning with all of those other aspects of doing games.
So this is one example of that, actually. So this is, if you see the title just up here. So we added a topic for marketing and PR. There's currently only 2 bits of content in there, but we really want to find people, now that we have those services, now that we're kind of expanding into providing tools for those areas, and having learning material for it as well. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm thinking about. Any other questions? Awesome. Then we'll move on swiftly. Given that I've taken up nearly all of the time, sorry.
Half an hour-ish. It's okay. Okay, so I have one spectacular slide. That's it. It's not a different one. That is it. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a last-minute addition. So this is all completely freestyled. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the game jam stuff that I've been working on, and a little bit about some of the user group stuff that I've been involved with, just to kind of speak about it really. So we've had a number of really interesting game jams so far this year, and well, I guess a little bit into last year as well. A couple of highlights, I guess, the Oculus VR jam, the Oculus VR Indiecade jam was a big success. Did anyone participate in that by any chance? No? Okay. But yeah, that was pretty awesome. We helped support the jam and sponsored them, and provided extended trial licenses to anyone who wanted to participate and use Unity. Generally, with those extended trials, they're kind of like the full suite with all the bells and whistles, just to kind of really be able to get your teeth into it. And that one particularly was really nice because I think it was something ridiculous like 93-94% of all of the games were produced using Unity. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking out the blog post about that, where I kind of go through some of the interesting projects, especially if you've got an Oculus to test them out on, because I had the interesting experience of going through all of the Unity titles on the website to check them out, and by the end of the day, I felt like I was kind of half in the Matrix because I'd just been constantly in the Oculus all day. Yeah, so that was a really interesting one, primarily from the perspective that it was obviously like working directly with a specific type of hardware and kind of exposing our community to it in like a kind of relatively competitive setting, or in this case it was kind of a jam where it was just everyone's kind of making a game and it's all awesome. So yeah, it's a good way of introducing hardware to people, and also getting access to that hardware as well. So I've got a bunch of different plans on additional things for that going forward. Another one that was really interesting was the train jam. How many people have heard of the train jam? So that was super cool. That was a project by Adriel Wallach, who thought up the crazy idea of getting a bunch of people on a train in Chicago and traveling all the way across the country to San Francisco. I think it's something like a 52-hour train ride, creating games the whole way, and then arriving at GDC in San Francisco with all of the games in the need of a shower. And but yeah, that seemed like that was a really successful event, and they were blown away by how positively it went. And again, we supported the jam with the trial licenses, but also we had a financial sponsorship as well in order to help pay for food. And I think what the idea was, we just had like an initial meeting meal kind of thing before everyone headed out that we were sponsoring. And yeah, it was a really interesting jam, and there was a very daring group that decided to use an Oculus to develop while also traveling on the train. So I don't know how they managed to do that, but yeah, I wrote up a blog post on that where I had an interview with Adriel post jam, which is interesting. The other really interesting thing about that jam is that shortly afterwards, shortly after GDC, there was the controversial game jam that popped up over in LA, which all of the developers ended up walking out on. So it was interesting to hear, the contrast of how to do a game jam really well and have a, great atmosphere, and having like the people who are working on the train come through and check out the game, and it was kind of like a weird public performance thing in a way, and then contrasting that with the kind of more dark side of it, I guess.
So what are your tips for a good game jam, Joe?
So number one, and this is one of the main key takeaways that I got from Adriel actually, was that the number one thing for organizing a game jam is just to make sure that the atmosphere is a very positive one. So just to ensure that everyone's comfortable and that they feel that they can just be themselves and work on games in a very kind of happy environment. Gender discrimination is generally not a good way to go. I guess that's a good thing. But when it comes to help from us as well, there's a number of people you could get in contact with, depending on where you are in the world. But obviously, I'm a good person to get in touch with because I do a lot of this stuff. If you ping me, did we have an hour or half an hour?
I thought it was an hour.
I
I just got a 3-minute sign. That's why I was like, yeah, it is an hour. Yeah.
Phew.
So I was doing some hand
Like 2
signals.
minutes.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, lunch breaks at 12.
Let's roll the website.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Tell us more
No.
about game jam.
Yeah, well, the
Yeah.
UI session is still going on for an hour.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need your rules. Cool. So yeah, with game jams, the number one point is that no matter what, like on the most basic level, we can always support you with trial licenses for all participants. That's kind of like the base level support. And yeah, so that's always a good point. We can always do that, even if it's like super last minute. If you get in touch, we've even got a nice little web interface for generating the trial, so you can just give that URL to all participants and they can just download and start using the trial, regardless of whether or not they've already used a trial or what status their licensing's in. So that's the point one. The second point is if you have like maybe a more ambitious project or something that's super interesting, we do have the possibility to help sponsor it as well. So that's another one. My email is jrobbins, R-O-B-I-N-S, 1B, at unity3d.com. You can also contact me on Twitter as well, at joe_robbins. And yeah, that's a good way of getting in touch about the jams. Yeah, so there's a bunch of other things that I'm working on at the minute. There's a really exciting project with the Global Game Jam that I've started talking to them about that I don't think I can announce anything on yet, unfortunately. But there's, there you
nice.
go. It's an interesting one coming up with them. And yeah, I think that's most things game jam related. But yeah, definitely get in touch. Or if you hear of anyone who's wanting to do a jam and they're kind of like struggling to work out what, how to set it up or what to do for getting licenses and everything, definitely get in touch. Second thing I wanted to talk briefly about is just the fact that since I moved back to the UK, I decided that with technically it's my free time, I was working with a guy called Dan Hett, who works over at the BBC in Manchester. We established the Manchester Unity User Group, which was a very interesting experience in terms of what's involved, especially when I kind of set this clear rule that it's something that I have to do outside of work, to kind of try and get the full experience as to how it is to set one of these things up. For us, we were relatively lucky because there's an existing kind of hub called the Mad Lab, where they do all kinds of bizarre different talks from various little cultures and strange things. So we even have what do you call it when you stuff dead animals?
Taxidermy.
Yeah, there's a taxidermy course. There's all kinds of interesting stuff going on there. And nestled in there, we've got the Unity user group. So we had a nice venue, and we also had a pub just across the road, so it was pretty convenient, really. Good setup.
So what did you learn?
That it takes a little bit more work than you might think. I mean, Manchester as a place doesn't necessarily have the largest developer community, relatively speaking. I mean, London and the South are definitely a lot more, there's a lot more people around. That being said, for the first couple of, the first one that we set up, we thought, maybe there'll be like 20 or so people show up. And we ended up selling out and having to increase the capacity to something like 50 just with the first group. So it was quite interesting. It's kind of like a build it and they will come kind of thing. And there was people that, came out of the woodwork that, no one from the immediate community knew about. Because there's already other, independent game development groups in Manchester. And, there was like 5 or 10 people in a function room of a pub hanging out, and it was relatively quiet. And so when we put on the Unity thing and then, 50 people showed up, it was quite an interesting surprise. So yeah, I guess that would be a rule, is that, shout about it and it'll, you'll attract a lot of people. In addition to that as well, this goes on to the kind of collaboration from our perspective and you guys' perspective as well. If you're doing events and stuff, definitely get in touch with us so that we can put the word out with our, social media power and megaphones, I guess, because that really helped our initial launch of the group as well. Just a single retweet of a thing about how we're setting up a Manchester Unity user group. You certainly reach a lot of ears that you might not necessarily. And it's still going strong. We've started figuring out better ways of structuring things and organizing things, and we have like a nice Google form now, so you can submit an idea for something that you want to talk about into a Google form, and then it populates a spreadsheet so that we have a big list of names and contact details of people who want to do a talk, which is a really good way of handling it. Because up until then, it's just been me and Dan kind of remembering, this guy wanted to talk about something. And yeah, it's been pretty cool. We've had some really interesting talks. A bunch of them has been recorded, although the quality in some of them is a little suspect, and the microphones were a bit sketchy. But we're kind of living and learning, I guess. So yeah, that's events and you guys, I guess. Any questions? Excellent.
Moving on. Oh, this is me. So the community development project, quite dramatically named. It's not as dramatic as that. Basically is something that, me and Will kind of started working on. We really wanted to give you better tools in the community. Right now, obviously, we've got the forums, answers, feedback, and issue tracker. So that's a lot of things to think about and to talk about. And we also wanted consistency. So between all those tools, you're always switching to a different site, a different system. It's never really the same. Yeah, you kind of have your profile, but it's not really all that connected to anything else, which is a little bit annoying if you want to keep track of all your posts or your issues in the issue tracker and in feedback, and any questions that you have on the answers is only on the answers, and the forums is only on the. It's a bit annoying. It's even annoying for me because I have to monitor all that. So I kind of feel your pain on doing that. And we also want to work on better communication. So sort of better way that goes through to better way of tracking what you're saying, what you're asking about, because then we can really target your pain points and bring that over to Brett, who talks about that a lot and really listens to what you're saying. And integration, I can't remember what that point was about. Yeah, I think that I already covered that in just synchronization. So integrating everything together into one community site instead of like 5 under the community tab, which is really irritating. Next slide, please. So the first step in that was actually to revamp the new forums, because I'm going to talk about this. I don't know if everyone knows. The old system was on vBulletin, and it was horrible and buggy, and the web development team hated it. I hated it. The moderators hated it. You could ask Richard over there, because he knows. So the revamp came, which we use Zen4 now, and it's fixed a lot of issues. It's also created some issues, but it's a lot easier for the web development team to actually fix those issues and update the website a lot faster, and we can put in plugins without having to break the whole site. So that's really nice. And we tried to keep it relatively styled the same, so it wasn't so much of a culture shock. Even though when we released it, everyone sort of complained, no, I want this changed, I want that changed. And then we did those changes, and then everyone complained that we should have put it back. It's weird. Anyway, so we won't be really touching much of how it looks again, I don't think. And we're going to be continuing to fix issues that sort of crop up. So that was the first thing that we did, and now we're going to sort of start thinking about a restructure of the forums a little bit, and that's not as dramatic as it sounds. It's more a combination of sort of changing the sections that everything is in. So everything's more related to the documentation and all the learn stuff. So it makes sense that when you go from the documentation or from a tutorial that you go onto the forums and it's under the same section, so it keeps that sort of consistency across the board. And that we don't really have a screenshot of it, but there is something. We have done sort of mock-ups that kind of exist of just squares of the different sections of things, so you don't have just a big wall of stuff. And we also want to do that across the answers as well, so keeping tags, not so many random tags, but again, keeping that consistency over on answers as well. And another thing I need to mention is that we're also talking to D-Zone about actually restyling the answers and making it a lot nicer to work with, and because we're still on their old system, and they're sort of like, you should use our new stuff, so we need to look at that, and that's also a part of this. I think I'm skipping forward on the slides. Sorry, that was the what's next. Yeah. And that's also synchronization. We were listening to NSYNC while writing these slides. And so now on to what I was talking about again with the profiles, keeping everything under the same umbrella and not like, because on the forums you have your own profile that shows you all your forum activity, everything you've been posting on, and then you switch over to answers. On answers you have another profile, you have your activity on there, and then on feedback and issue tracker, who knows? Like you can't track anything on there, and it's also very irritating for us because it would be really nice if us and also the developers, like I can tell them like, look, there's this dude user's issue. He's talking about it in the forums, and he's also got an issue tracker link that he's posted. So instead of having to manually look for that or asking you constantly, what's the bug number on the forums? So.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to say about this is that a lot of companies, a lot of websites make the mistake of thinking they should add some kind of social hub instead of Facebook, and we're really not doing that. We just want to find a good way of taking those systems that you already use and aggregating the information that you need into one place so that it serves you well and it serves us well in order to help you better as well. So we put together just a few wireframes of some of the things that we've been talking about with the web team. So the first one is a mock-up of a profile, which looks like this. So your username there, a following, a quick description of yourself, some links, so that when you do have that, post on the forum, if someone wants to find out who you are and what you do, you have the ability to tell them that if you want to. Obviously, we're not going to force you to do any of this stuff. But the main core thing that Aurora's been talking about is this activity feed, the idea that you can just have all of your most recent stuff that you've done. If you want to jump back into it, you could find it easily and filter it via those different systems. So we'll get your opinion on that in a moment, but we'll just go ahead and talk about the other stuff first.
Yeah, we might as well. So other ideas. Again, when we sort of originally, a little bit of history, me and Will sat together and was just like, what can we do to fix all these issues and make things a lot better for everyone? We kind of scoped it huge, so then we could later cull everything down. And one of the other ideas that we had in that is having a showcase area, because we have the showcase area on the forums, and it's kind of messy, and you can't really find anything. And you want to be able to show off your stuff, but it's kind of like, here's a forum post all in text, and here's some images that I had to put in. I have to keep track of it. So this is kind of another idea that we're putting on the shelf right now, because we want to concentrate on the main functionality of getting the profiles and everything consistent before we actually go into all the nice fancy stuff. So the main idea behind this is having a feed of the feed is like everyone's new stuff based on popularity or whatever you filter it by, and some featured stuff on the side. And so all the drop downs would be like filtering of what you want to find and stuff. And then you can also create stuff. So when you create, it sort of pops up, and you can create, you show off your project. There's an overview there, and you can upload. Sorry, I have really terrible eyesight, so I'm going to look over here. You can upload a web player thing, but now obviously it's going to be WebGL, so we'll probably think about that if it happens in the future. Images, video, and we also put code in there just in case you wanted to show off some coding examples to, I don't know, some people get asked, like, how did you actually do that? It's like, well, this. So that's cool. We also got a like button there, so that will fuel the popularity system, so that it's not just like the newest post, and we know sometimes there's some not such cool stuff that happens. And this is where you can create, and this also houses your projects, and you can filter it all. We sort of had this concept of having like a work in progress and complete phase, so it's obvious to other people that, you know, this is like, I'm working on this isn't going to be the greatest thing, and then the complete is just like, this is definitely my final project. And we do have teams on there, shall I touch on that a bit? Yeah, what, Lee?
I mean, we talked a bit about the idea of grouping people together into teams and having a way of getting people together in groups within the community. We're kind of thinking about that at the moment because there is this same concept in a lot of our services. So with the cloud build and with all of those other things, we do have the concept of teams. But what we want to do is interface with those guys, with those teams, and make sure that what we do in the community works together with that. So that when you log in as a developer, you can be part of a community-based team, you can be part of an actual development team, use the services, and have it more of a development hub. So the way I'm thinking about it right now, we probably wouldn't have the concept of teams necessarily here, but actually for real in an actual in the actual development portal that we'll eventually have once those services are all online. Question?
Yeah. With the teams, I know people like on the forums will spawn a big thread where they worked on the community ocean model for a while, and people would sort of band together, and there was a skybox one, and there are a whole bunch like that. I mean, is that the team concept that we all get together on the forum?
So that was what we were thinking about when we were kind of mocking these things up, was that people would get together and work on something. Obviously, there's a big leap between, you know, a bunch of guys getting together to say, oh, let's make this kind of asset or make this feature together, versus, you know, a company that needs to use a bunch of different services. So we're trying to figure out what that middle ground between those 2 points is right now. And I don't have a concrete answer, to be honest with you, but we'll figure it out.
But it is something, the reason, as you said, that we put it on the shelf and we really want to integrate with the other services, guys. We don't want to isolate ourselves from those other services. Like, we're talking about integration on the community site. We also want to integrate internally with Unity as well, which is why a lot of this stuff is sort of, I didn't mean to talk about it, sorry, Will.
Cool.
So here's what it would be like to actually like edit, well, not exactly what it would be like, but our brain dump into an image, I guess, sort of inline editing and dragging and dropping images and stuff, just so it's quick and simple. And that's quick.
So we, just to be totally honest, because someone's probably going to call us on it, we pretty much ripped off the Behance network in some of the kind of ways of putting things together, but we thought that the way they do things is a very good, approach to displaying content, etc. The only obvious issue with the way that we're kind of imagining some of this showcase functionality is it leans very heavily towards the art side of things. You know, if you haven't got a thumbnail to put up, but you've made a game that's very impressive code-wise, you want to show off your programming skills, then it's less easy to do that. But there's a number of things we can do with it. The next slide is pertinent to Joe, of course.
Yes. This is another thing that's been on our minds, but isn't in development. Yes?
Yeah, so we have a user groups. Do we still have a user groups page?
Yeah, we do.
We do, but it's not properly kind of maintained. So what we really want to do is just get that user groups page fixed up and register all of the ones that we can find around the globe and make it a lot easier just to search with your location or maybe Google Maps geolocate and allow you to find user groups near yourself. It's an easy win that we can probably do sooner than a lot of the other stuff we've been talking about, hopefully. Thomas, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we have
Do you want to give him a mic? Yeah. Thomas is our web development lead mastermind.
So actually, we have a page today with all the user groups that we know of. It's really simple, but I don't know, there might be 100 or more now. So obviously, we want to expand that with some kind of cool map functionality, but it's more important for us to actually, list all the user group that we know of. And on that page, there's an email address that if you're not listed on that page, shoot us a mail and we'll add you.
Next slide. Yeah. Questions and answers.
Okay, so yeah, we really wanted to just get your thoughts about anything, stuff we haven't talked about, stuff we have talked about, and
ideas and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we might need a mic runner.
I'm going to be
Sorry.
the mic runner, aren't I? Sweet.
I'm Britney Spears.
Thanks. So I guess I have two questions. One on the profiles. I think it might be a good idea to also list if those people are selling assets or things on the asset store. As sort of like they're contributing to the community, and these are also the things that they're selling, and you can kind of judge their personality a little bit, like whether they're sketchy or not, and they're going to support the products. I'm thinking of a couple people, or if they're just like totally solid. And I guess I forgot what the second thing was anyway. Sorry.
So it's kind of like an eBay model of reputation, right? Yeah, that's a very good point. One thing, obviously, to get over with that is a lot of people make a company profile that goes on the asset store versus their personal thing. So we'd have to figure that out, but that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Oh.
So you guys have talked about a lot of parts of the site, but one thing you haven't talked about, and it doesn't seem like there's any work that's been done on it for a few years, is the community wiki page, the Unify community stuff that then became wiki.unity3d.com. Do you guys have any specific plans for that? It seems to just kind of have stagnated.
Yeah, it totally has. We've basically done nothing with it apart from just taking it over and making sure it doesn't get deleted, which is a bit lame. But basically, we need to put it back into the Learn pages, go through everything, make sure there's not much that's up to date, notify everyone that's got stuff on there that we're going to flush out stuff that's not up to date, and then kind of just get the interest back in it, really. It's really bad because I said all of this last year and we still haven't done it. So I'm going to try and make sure we do that this time.
So with the community content you're doing on the Learn site, where users can submit videos and things, is that a more appropriate place for wiki-type stuff to go? It seems like a lot of people use that for learning or for assets to get started in their projects.
I mean, that's one of the reasons probably why we haven't touched the wiki is that we, create this whole site, this framework, and categorizations of things that would fit into that. Whereas the wiki, well, as it stands right now, is more of a kind of a wild west of bits and pieces. But there's some really valuable good stuff in there that I still go in and grab something every now and then, and it could be great again. So maybe we should try and do that. I mean, what do you guys think? Let's just take a show of hands. So how many people would want to use a wiki for just finding samples of things? Because obviously the asset store isn't ideal for just grabbing individual parts. So hands up who would use a wiki these days for finding examples. Okay, it's a fairly small number. Is that because you're not used to using a wiki for Unity stuff? Just like an example script that does something, or a shader or something like that.
No, it was all user-submitted stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as an alternative to the documentation, obviously we don't have that many examples per page in the docs. So the wiki historically was there to allow people to supplement that, but we haven't done enough with it. So,
It was a cool place to add scripts that you wanted to kind of open source but didn't really want to maintain.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, the maintenance part is obviously one of the issues, which is why it hasn't been updated. But
I was just going to mention that I have used the wiki a lot, and I've found a lot of really great scripts, but I've also found stuff that's been horribly outdated and kind of slowed me down as well, just because there's better ways to do things, but at the time it was posted, it was a good way, I guess.
so I mean, just to kind of close up on the wiki, I think what we really need to do is just kind of flush out the older stuff, and then just kind of start afresh and see if we can get, you know, a bunch of maybe people here who are interested in donating up-to-date stuff, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But it's definitely something I'm interested in, you know, reinvigorating.
Can I add some more comment here?
Yes, sorry, just to introduce Rasmus from our docs and build engineering team.
Hi. For 5.0, we're actually looking into compiling all the sample codes in the documentation, so the part of the scripting API. And I think if we actually had a community content, we should also have some automatic compiling of this, so we actually verify that it works with the current version. So yes, we have heard that you are a little bit annoyed by all the sample examples that doesn't compile when you copy paste them. So we are looking into fixing that. We haven't figured that out yet, but I think let's talk about this. Well, yeah.
Cool. So when we do figure that out, we'll blog about it. Why not? Next question.
So one of the things that you guys tried a couple of times was Google Hangouts. And having that kind of real-time interaction, like real-time chat, is really, really nice. You haven't done one for a while, but I was wondering if you're going to do more of that kind of real-time, like either with a video or possibly even using the IRC to do like a sort of moderated chat session or something like that. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things on that. We do want to do more Hangouts. We just, for whatever reason, haven't done them for a while. We want to, yeah, I mean, we'll do more to talk about some of the 5 stuff that's coming up, but generally we just want to do them to answer questions. I think so. Obviously, you know, to be totally honest and frank with you, after March we were expecting any Hangout to be bombarded with. So when's this pricing thing coming anyway? So we've kind of not done that, which is our bad and not cool. I appreciate that. But yeah, we will do more Hangouts and a number of other things that we can and could do. So we do the live training, which uses Twitch, which I think is quite popular. But one of the things about that is that sometimes the chat isn't ideal, isn't up to date enough. So what I want to do is do a little bit more research into how best to make sure a real-time experience works really well. I mean, Twitch, I think, uses IRC format for its chat anyway in some form in the back end. But there's ways to make it a more seamless experience, and that's what we want to do. But in the meantime, Google Hangouts is a pretty cool format, and I think we're going to keep doing more of those as time goes on. Grab more of our developers to talk about what they're working on, which, you know, I think makes sense for everyone. There's a question back here.
You talked about how the samples are open source or will be open source. Are those available on GitHub? Such that like people could do pull requests on them? Yeah. They already are? Okay, so that's the plan?
Yeah, so we're currently fixing some of the last few things that will be fixed in the 5.0 version of them. And then when we're happy with that, we can launch them as beta, and that's probably a good time to open source them to us. And when the actual release comes around, they'll be more bug-free for people who are only interested in grabbing them out of the store.
And what license will you use?
I would guess. Yeah, I mean, it will be open to do whatever you want with them because we already intend for you to use them for any. Yeah, we'll do that.
Hi. So I feel like your community outreach has always been a great strength of Unity. So I've just found it kind of odd at a time where some of your like traditionally closed competitors, like Unreal, like, you know, they were always like, you know, super proprietary AAA. They've had like an explosion of openness. Like you can compile nightly source code and like track issues publicly. And then at the same time kind of feeling, you guys have always traditionally like done the right thing, you know. But like there was like the great beta purge of 2013, you know, where a lot of people were kicked off the beta forums. Have you guys considered taking like a hard look at your beta program and how open it is?
I mean, I don't think we've got any QA guys here.
No, this would be an answer for Thomas, really.
Yeah, it's a question for our head of. Yeah, I mean, but that's not really a question, is it? It's more about the access to the beta. Is that what you're asking?
Sorry, just the feedback of developers into the beta. Like you know, again, like Unreal, it's like you have the nightly source code and you're able to give feedback or even directly commit source code. I know that that's a bigger issue, but even just like I was on the beta forums and I was kind of a lurker, but you know, I worked like on Battlestar Galactica and stuff. And I feel like I could contribute, you know, useful things once in a while, and for a mass purge to happen, like, that just felt weird at that time too.
Okay, I mean, the kind of purge that you're talking about was, I mean, I think it was reasonably well considered. Like the large amount of people that we had on there that weren't contributing anything at all was refocused in order to, you know, to get the quality of feedback up and to make sure that we weren't bogged down with duplicates of a lot of things. I mean, if there are things that we're not doing that we should do in order to allow you to give us feedback, then yeah, I mean, tell us, like, what kind of things do you mean? Without, obviously, you know, without leaving the ability to commit stuff to source code aside, because obviously that's not current.
I mean, just the ability to interact or like see an issue and go, oh yeah, I'm having that too, and then direct that in my bug reports. And it kind of goes to tying into what you're saying with like integrating that whole experience of, you know, it'd be great if there's like a public issue tracker and stuff, and getting that closer to the beta code.
You mean a public issue tracker for the beta, or?
Well, I mean, like there's...
Because the issue tracker right now is public. Like every release bug is on there, apart from obviously NDA console stuff that we're not allowed to share.
Right.
But when it comes to like beta stuff, that's really stuff that's kept on the beta group, so we can't have like a public issue tracker for that, unfortunately.
So is it the Google Groups format that you don't like? I mean, because a lot of people do discuss and have pretty valuable conversations, at least from our perspective. If we're wrong, that's totally cool. On those, I mean, anyone else like got a story from the beta groups to share or alpha groups? Elliot?
I think part of the issue, besides people who weren't contributing, was I think there were some leaks, and they just sort of, wow, some stuff got leaked, and there's all these people not contributing, so maybe we should do something about that. And I don't know if it was the right or wrong choice, but I think that was also part of it.
But what's your experience?
I'm on several of them. I find them very useful, and I actually save them to my hard drive so that when I come across something, I can just quickly search, like even if I'm not online. I've submitted bugs, and I've found a lot of useful information on the beta groups personally. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is an age-old problem because, you know, we have a finite QA bandwidth, and, you know, we're getting in a huge volume of stuff and we're fixing it at the same time. We have the same thing with the what's the sustained engineering team that are doing the patch releases on the forum all the time, every week. So, you know, there's a certain amount of stuff we can do, and if we open it even more, then it does lead to, you know, the quality of feedback becoming lower, and actually the signal to noise ratio actually creates a problem. So it's a tough one, and we haven't got it perfectly right yet. I agree with that.
So, I'm sorry, we're kind of out of time, but if you want to, sorry to be the party pooper, if you want to ask us questions, we're still around, so you can.
Yeah, we're going to be around. We'll probably be at the hands-on labs all day tomorrow for the most part. So yeah, just come and see us and chat to us, or chat to us now if you want. Cool. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.